Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Yeah, no sweat. Thank you for talking to me.
So, I've been loving the new record, Lucero's When You Found Me. First, let's go back to the making of that record and the sort of the hard start that you had. How many nerves did you have going into the studio when you couldn't have even practiced the record? Isn't that right? You didn't get to practice this before you went into
Right.
Sun City.
Yeah, that's right. No, we'd all been quarantined, and so that had left me a lot of time to work on demos, and I'd fleshed out the demos maybe too much. I'd had too much time to layer them up with drum machines and keyboards and guitar lines, and so that's what I emailed the guys, and that's what they were learning before we went into the studio. So it was they were a little nervous because usually, you get together and rehearse and everybody bashes out their parts and kind of comes up with their own thing. But in this case, the songs kind of already existed in this demo form, this very dense demo form. So once we got in there, we had to just kind of whittle away at each song and kind of figure out ways for each band member to kind of make something out of what was there, make it their own. And I think they did a very admirable job of taking the mess that I gave them in those demos and turning it into actual Lucero songs. But yeah, since we'd been quarantined, the process worked a little differently than it had in the past.
Let's talk about the arc of these songs when you start out with Have You Lost Your Way and you end with the title track, When You Found Me.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about the story arc in this album?
Well, it's not exactly a concept record or anything, but I think there is kind of a consistency to the whole thing, and there's definitely a few themes that run through the record. I don't know. One of the things that kind of caught me off guard was how much my daughter would influence me, and she's 4 years old now, so there's a lot of bedtime stories and singing her songs to put her to sleep at night and reading her stories and stuff. And I don't know. I think that kind of fairy tale storytelling kind of subconsciously worked its way into some of the songs. And the first couple of songs actually have kind of a young girl heroine main character facing different adversities that she has to work her way through or overcome. And that might be a perspective and a point of view that I haven't written much from in the past. But now that I have a daughter, I've been kind of viewing her as I don't know, I've been kind of tapping into that source for some of the songwriting material, which is something new for us. But yeah, I don't know, even the stories the songs that aren't specifically fairy tales, I think have kind of a storybook quality to them. But yeah, I'm sorry, I was kind of wandering there. To get back to your actual question of how the record starts with the first song, Have You Lost Your Way, and ends with When You Found Me. That was an accident, but it was an accident that I really enjoyed coming across. It kind of puts a bookends on the record, and I don't know. There could be kind of a redemptive quality to that journey through each song on the record. I don't know. It wasn't intentional, but I like the way it turned out.
Well, this is definitely a Lucero record, and it's definitely kind of a first for a Lucero record with the addition of synths. And if I threw out the names Foreigner and Love and Rockets, would that be too far off the mark as far as where some of this is coming from, or it has at least a parallel?
Man, I love that. I'm a fan of both of those bands. And yeah, this was kind of I didn't want to make a retro record in any way, but I did want to touch into some of that nostalgia and some of that sound that I grew up with just on kind of 80s rock and roll radio. Later when I was 12 and 13, I found my own bands, the punk rock bands or the local bands that definitely went into forming what Lucero might become. But there's those childhood songs that you can't escape from. Your John Cougar Mellencamp and your Tom Petty, and yeah, your Foreigner and your Boston and all that stuff, all that radio rock from the '80s. There was a part of me that really wanted to incorporate some of that into Lucero songs, and this album is kind of my love letter to that era. I think we've still got a Lucero record, like you said. The songwriting is still, I think it's still kind of coming from the same kind of heart and soul. But it's nice to experiment with some different sounds from time to time. Lucero's been known to go different directions for different albums. Each one kind of has its own character. And so this one has its own character as well.
I think going back to your previous record, Among the Ghosts, it seems like your songwriting might have a bit of a different vantage point now. Maybe is it that you're married and have a daughter that you're doing more character studies? Is that somewhere close?
Sure. I think so. I think, we've been a band for over 20 years now, and I've covered the long nights of heartbreak and whiskey and bar rooms and broken relationships. I've covered that territory in my lyrics quite a bit. And so, yeah, since I got married about 4 or 5 years ago, I don't write those kind of songs as much anymore, and I think that's a good thing. Like I said, I think I've covered that ground. I'm still writing about. There's still a melancholy to it, and there's still a loneliness to it sometimes even. But now that loneliness is more about being separated from your family and the ones that you love. So really, it strikes me as even more intense. The sadness and the emotions that run through these songs now. It's not just about a random relationship. It's about, a very serious family relationship, whether it's about missing your daughter or your wife or whatever. It's, I don't know. I think there's a greater intensity to it now. But yeah, there's some more. I'm writing in third person a little more often now. And that's really just me trying to get better at the songwriting craft. I think in the past I've had a tendency to just kind of write songs kind of like diary entries, which that can work sometimes. But if you can actually think about the story a little bit more and try to craft it a little bit more, I think that could benefit me. So I've been trying to do that. I don't know if I've really nailed that yet, but it's something I'm working on.
Did you write Outrun the Moon with Larry Brown in mind?
I did. It kind of I didn't set out to write a Larry Brown type story in that song, but as it came together, those were the images that were kind of running through my mind. There was a novel called Faye in particular about a young girl kind of on the run. And so that story kept popping up in my head. And my story is much simpler than anything he would write, but I at least wanted to kind of, conjure that ghost and maybe put a little bit of that spirit into that song where, you've got your backcountry roads and a young girl kind of on her own, wandering through the night and, trying to find her way. I don't know. He was really good at that, and I wanted to tap into a little bit of that.
Anybody that knows you knows you're a fan of Cormac McCarthy. Go back to your solo record, Last Pale Light in the West, and there you've got a whole lot to go on as far as that goes. But what does that tell us about you that you like these really gritty authors?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm a history major. Actually, I was a history major in college. I wasn't as good at the literature at the time when I was a kid. I could interpret a history book, nonfiction book, much better than I could interpret and write an essay on a fictional book, a literature piece. And so I gravitated to the kind of maybe the more realistic. And that's just kind of always been natural for me. So yeah, maybe I like these kind of very hard-boiled, possibly more realistic, kind of straightforward writers. I don't know. The other side of me. There's a flip to that I love fantasy and science fiction as well. But the grittiness is always there, no matter what genre it is. I prefer something that's a little more. I don't know. I'm not even sure what the word for it is. I'm failing you right at the moment. But yeah, that's been my taste always.
But it syncs up with Lucero's vibe perfectly. That subject matter, that sort of genre of prose and writing kind of fits right in with your music.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. Like I said, there's always been, from the very beginning of Lucero, there was always a certain melancholy and a certain loneliness to the type of songs I was writing. Whether they were happy or sad, that loneliness was kind of always there. And I don't know. I think maybe that's I gravitate to that in other mediums, whether it's the books I'm reading or the histories that I'm reading or the shows that I watch. I just, for some reason, I like that, and it appeals to me. There's I don't know. It makes me less lonely when I can sing about it, or when I can see that on the screen or in a book. I don't know. It resonates with me, and it helps me get through the through the tough times.
Well, you've probably seen a good bit of Lucero's music on the screen. You know, you've got a cinematic quality there. You've been on plenty of movies and TV shows and whatnot. How important is that to you and to the band?
Man, that's always a treat. You know, or at least when I was starting to play music and be in a band, I always thought it would be really cool to have your song featured in TV shows or movies. And luckily, with my little brother, Jeff Nichols, being a pretty darn good writer and director, filmmaker, he's used a lot of our stuff in his movies. So I've gotten to see that a bit. But then also the stuff like getting a Last Pale Light in the West was featured in a Walking Dead episode, and that was huge. I was a fan of the comic book, and then I was a fan of the show. So I've been watching the show since day one, and when the producer called me to ask if he could use that song, I was like, yes, of course, please. Yeah, I'll do anything. And so that was a treat. And getting to do Treme was really cool. That was a treat as well. So you don't plan on that, or at least we didn't plan on it, but it's nice when it happens.
I love that short film that you've got up, The Long Way Back Home, with Michael Shannon, Scoot McNairy, who has the best name, by the way.
That's he's got a great name. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was excellent in True Detective season 3, was it? Whichever season took place in Fayetteville, Scoot McNairy was in that, and he did a great job in True Detective. But he was great in the last Tarantino movie as well. He had a small part in that. Yeah, and then Garrett Hedlund was the other actor in that video. But yeah, my brother Jeff kind of called in some favors with these excellent actors, and they all came to Memphis and helped us make this. It's more than a music video. It's a short film, and we did it in about a week. And that's one of the coolest things Lucero's ever done as a band, is get that video made. I like that song, and I kind of gave my brother that song's on Among the Ghosts, and I gave him the record, and I was like, man, just whatever strikes you, we'll make a video for whichever one you like, and that's the one he picked. I think maybe because it is kind of, that song has that kind of Larry Brown type storytelling, which is kind of Jeff Nichols type storytelling. He takes a lot from that kind of stuff too. And yeah, I think we hit the nail on the head with that video. I'm really proud of it.
What's your take on what Michael Shannon's character did at the end of that?
That's a good question. And I like that Jeff leaves it kind of vague. You don't know if he's gonna help his brothers get away, or if he's gonna shoot one of them. Yeah, it's we filmed some other scenes where one of them does get shot, and there's some other takeouts and stuff that maybe they'll see the light of day in the future. But I like it being left more ambiguous. I like to think, of course, that the brothers came together at the end, and I don't know. I'm not got away from the cops or did whatever they had to do. Since I come from a family of 3 brothers, I like to think that the brothers stuck together in the end.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for musicians and bands that might like to get into film soundtracks?
I don't actually have a successful brother who's a filmmaker. That's one of them. we've had people that we've worked with who've tried to, you know, push the songs to certain filmmakers, or I don't know how they do it. They try to sell the songs. They try to get them placed, I guess is what they say. But that's never worked for us. It's always just been a writer on the show, or the producer, or the showrunner happens to be a fan. Like one of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten was when Scott Gimple, the showrunner from Walking Dead, he was like, "Oh man, I've written a lot of scenes to The Walking Dead while listening to Last Pale Light in the West," and that's just as cool as having a song in there. Just knowing that that's what he's listening to while he's writing some of these scenes that's a huge compliment. But it all comes down to just having somebody that's actually working on the project be a fan. That's how we've gotten those little things that we have gotten. So, yeah, I wish I knew how to get more stuff into more projects, but I don't. It's just all luck so far.
Let's talk about Memphis and the scene there and working in Sun Studios. I mean, you're no stranger to Sun Studios. This is a legendary town for music. What's
Right?
it like nowadays?
Man, well, Sun Studios is still, they're doing tours there. That's where Matt Rossbang, the producer of When You Found Me and the last record, Among the Ghosts, that's where he's kind of started off. When he was like 16 years old, he started working there. But now he's got an office at Sam Phillips Recording Service, which is the building and the studio that Sam built after he sold Elvis to RCA. So he took that money and moved out of the building where Sun Studios is, where they do the tours. And he built this new studio just a couple blocks down the road on Madison. And it's been the same ever since 1960 or 61, whenever they finished building it. You walk in and it still looks like 1961 in there. And it's cool because it was purpose built as a studio. So there's a long hallway with some offices and Studio A and Studio B, but then at the end of the hallway, you open a door and you walk into a cave, and it's just a reverb kind of cavern. And there's other reverb chambers built throughout the walls, and even the lobby is kind of built to have certain acoustic properties. They're different from the studio, the cutting rooms, and it's kind of like a mad scientist built this studio, and that was Sam Phillips. He was the mad scientist of kind of rock and roll. And a kid like Matt Rossbang, like I said, our producer, that's a perfect spot for him. He knows what Sam was kind of up to, and he knows how to utilize all that stuff. So it's really fun going into a place like Sam Phillips Recording Service in Memphis, Tennessee, with a Memphis producer, and just kind of tapping into that Memphis rock and roll spirit. We're not at Sun, where Elvis was and Johnny Cash was and Jerry Lee and all that stuff and Howlin' Wolf, but we're at Sam Phillips, where, I don't know, they did record a whole lot of stuff there. Wooly Bully, Sam the Sham recorded Wooly Bully there, and there's a little bar in the upstairs where, Johnny Cash would hang out, and all those Sun Studio guys would hang out, and you can still feel it. It's really nice getting to work in our own kind of hometown and have such, the ghosts of these kind of heroes of yours being present. It's just really cool.
Let's talk about your roots in Arkansas and maybe your thoughts on how that culture shows itself in your music.
Yep, as much as I love Memphis, and I do call it my hometown now, I was born and raised in Little Rock, Arkansas. And my family's been from Arkansas forever. Both my parents were from a small town called Altimer, Arkansas. And it was just cotton farms, soybeans, rice. And yeah, the family's been in Arkansas for a long time. I'm not even sure how far back it goes, before the Civil War. And so I've always had a strong connection with Arkansas, and it's still my favorite state. I miss it. I wish I could go back a lot. But growing up there, it's funny is, you've got Johnny Cash, obviously, he's from Arkansas. And that was a big thing for me. That's especially when I started Lucero. Johnny Cash was a big influence, and I really liked the fact that he was from the same state that I was from. But then you had the Johnny Cash influence, but really Little Rock, for me, growing up and going to high school there was a really cool punk rock scene there. And in the late 80s to, late 90s, a lot of bands came through, and there was just a ton of local bands that had really eclectic tastes. And there was a spot down at the Riverfront Park in Little Rock, Arkansas, when downtown was still abandoned. It was before it got the Little Riverfront Park, and had a Belvedere, a kind of gazebo thing, and it had power outlets, and the power was always on, so you could just go down there and plug in a little PA system and plug in your amps and have a show. And so yeah, I grew up in high school and college going to all these shows, and there was no booze, there was no bars, there was no bouncers. It was just you go plug in and play, and so it was a very kind of do-it-yourself type of thing. And bands from all over the country would come and play this gazebo in Little Rock, and I just that's where I learned how to be in a band, and that's where I learned how to, or at least one way of making rock and roll music. And so that's kind of where I really got inspired and decided this is something I want to do for a long time. I learned all that in Little Rock. Yeah.
Arkansas is in the South, but it's also at the intersection of the Midwest. So I imagine it's got a little bit of a different vibe versus the culture of a lot of the rest of the South.
Maybe so. I mean, you split it diagonally right down the state, and the kind of southeast is Mississippi Delta and farmland, all cotton fields and soybeans and stuff, rice, a lot of duck hunting, deer hunting. But then the whole northwest and western part of the state is Ozark Mountains and Ouachita Mountains. Not quite as big as the stuff, out near y'all and the Appalachians, but still really pretty. And definitely a different culture than the Southeast. So you do have a little bit of mountains versus farmland. And that dichotomy is really cool. And I wish I knew more about traditional Arkansas music, but I don't. I know about the weird little punk rock bands that sprung up in this kind of middle of nowhere town. And that's really kind of more what influenced me was these kids finding whatever little influences they could, whether it's from zines or, music videos or, I don't know, whatever they could get their hands on in those old days pre-internet, and kind of cobbling together this punk rock scene in this odd southern town. That's what really got me kind of fired up.
Can you comment on what you might think Lucero is reflecting back to this culture? Is there any takeaway that you want your fans or you want people that are listening to your music to maybe the top one or two things that you want them to get?
Man, that's a big question. I don't know if anybody's ever really put it like that before. I don't know if I've ever really thought about it like that before. What would I want folks to get from Lucero as a whole? I guess really, it's a very personal thing for me. The songwriting, I'm really writing the songs to kind of get me through the long nights and the tough spots and the loneliness and that's really where it kind of all came from. I love how music can make you feel. I love how rock and roll can really get you going. But I also love how sad songs can, I don't know, the sadder the song, the more it supports you in a way sometimes. Whether it's just that you can relate, that somebody out there has been through what you've been through. I don't know. There's something about that, just wallowing in those sad songs that really helps me. And so I don't know. I hope that kind of connects with the listeners. And I hope that there's something in Lucero that can maybe help them get through the tough times too.
Well, speaking of tough times, it's been a rough year, and I know you don't have a forecast. Nobody knows when we can come up for air, but do you have a game plan about next summer? Are you trying to look forward to planning anything?
We're hoping for the best. This record comes out, When You Found Me comes out late January. So right now, we're looking into the spring, and when things start to warm up, would maybe like to book a tour of outdoor venues. Something where you can still stay, socially distanced, and trying to figure out ways to play live music in a safe way. We'll see. I think it's going to be a while before anything close to normal comes back. I'm afraid it might be, 2022, or I don't know. I'm not sure when. Before, we're all jammed into a packed, tiny club together, arm in arm, screaming, along with the lyrics. I'm not sure when that's going to come back. I'm going to miss that a lot until it does come back. But it would be nice if we could figure out some, outdoor venues seems like the right first move to me. So we're looking into that right now. I'm pretty sure we'll be on the road one way or another once things start to warm up in 2021.
Thinking back to your daughter, and what's the most dad rock move you've pulled off? Have you like rolled up to the grocery store with the, Run the Jewels blaring and you're in your PJs or something?
That's an interesting question as well. I'm sure I've done a whole lot of embarrassing things and just don't realize it's embarrassing because as a dad, it's not embarrassing to you. Right. It might be embarrassing to your family. I have a feeling I've got two stepdaughters, teenagers, and I have a feeling I've embarrassed them more than I've embarrassed. Izzy's only 4, so she thinks I'm awesome. Everything I do is great for Izzy. The older kids, I'm sure I've embarrassed them, but really I don't know how because I'm obviously the coolest dad around. I got a cool job and I got good taste in music. Yeah, I don't know. I have invited my stepdaughter Jocelyn. She plays piano and sings, and it's really cool having someone else in the house that writes songs. That's new for me. And listening to a 15, 16-year-old young girl put these songs together is really awesome. Just because I can kind of relate to that. I know what's going into that process, and I know what she's thinking, and I know kind of, at least, I kind of know what she's thinking. And I can see her working through these, not problems, but puzzles kind of. Putting a song together is kind of like putting together a puzzle. And hearing her do it and watching her do it is really cool. And for her Lucero last year on her mom's birthday, we happened to be playing a big hometown Memphis show. And I got her to come out on stage and sing this song that she'd written for her mom. And as embarrassed as she was to be called on stage, she handled it very gracefully, and really she ended up stealing the show. I'm pretty sure that's all people remember from that night that were there. She sang beautifully. So yeah, there's I don't know. It's a whole lot of fun having daughters now. It's I'm still getting used to it, but there's all sorts of exciting stuff going on now that I've got a family. Yeah. And really, it kind of ties back into When You Found Me, and that song in particular, the title track off the record. Really, that song's about how my family saved me, kind of saved me from myself, maybe, and continues to save me in different little ways every day. And so yeah, I'm real lucky in that way, and I think that's a little bit of that's on this record for sure.
That's great. So you didn't have a sister, just brothers?
No, raised with just boys, brothers.
So this is the opposite of that.
My poor mother, yeah. And this is the exact opposite. Now I'm in a house of girls and women, and but it's great. I have no idea what I'm doing, but but we're very happy, and I think everybody's having fun. And it's really cool. I didn't really see myself ending up here exactly, but I think I'm very lucky that I did.
Ben Nichols from Lucero, really, really appreciate you being on the show. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Man, no, we've covered a lot of ground actually. No, I'm real excited that even in, these weird times, that we can still put out music. I'm thankful that, I guess one thing I'm very appreciative of is the fact that we've only played, live streams and online since March. We've only done a handful of shows. But the fan base has been so just helpful and supportive. Having a fan base like that is amazing, and it really helps us get through these tough times. And the fact that we can play some shows and put out a record during a pandemic is the fact that we can still do it's super cool, and I really appreciate the fans allowing us to do that. I guess that's getting that in there is good.
Ben Nichols, thank you so much. We'll look forward to the release.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate
the
it.
record come January, When You Found Me. Take care.
I can't wait for you to hear it. Thanks for talking.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.